Hey there, and welcome. So, you're thinking about solar power. That's awesome. It's more accessible and affordable than it's ever been, but let's be honest, figuring out where to even begin can feel like a huge challenge. In this explainer, we are going to cut through all that noise and give you a super clear roadmap to get started. Does this look familiar? You get really excited about the idea of making your own power from the sun, but then you start looking into it and bam, you're hit with all this technical jargon, different components, crazy specs, and it all just gets, well, overwhelming. Trust me, you are not alone. And that's exactly what we're going to do. We're going to break this whole thing down into simple, understandable steps. My promise to you is that by the end of this, you'll have the confidence and the knowledge to start planning your very own solar setup. To give you that structure, we're going to start with the absolute basics. Then we'll jump into sizing your system, choosing the right gear, and finally, I'll give you some tips for shopping smart. Let's kick things off with the fundamentals. Okay, to really get a grip on all this, we're going to use an absolutely brilliant analogy, the garden hose. I know it sounds simple, but this one idea is the key. It's going to unlock your understanding for everything else that follows.
First up, let's talk about volts. Just think of volts as the water pressure coming out of your spigot. It's the force, the oomph, that's pushing the electricity through the wires. In most of our homes, this is a standard number, like 120 or 240 volts. It's the constant pressure in the system.
Okay, so what about amps? Well, if volts are the pressure, then amps are basically the thickness of your garden hose. It makes sense, right? A bigger, wider hose lets a whole lot more water flow through at once. It's the exact same thing with electricity. More amps means a higher rate of flow. It's the volume. And this brings it all together perfectly. Watts. Watts are the real work getting done. It's the water that's actually filling up your bucket. See, it's the total power you get when you combine that pressure, the volts, with the flow rate, the amps. And here's the crucial part to remember. Volts times amps equals watts. That's the formula you're going to need. All right, theory time is over. Now that we've got the basics down, we can move from just understanding it to actually doing something with it. Let's figure out exactly how much power you actually need, and we're going to do it with a super simple 3-step plan. Here are the 3 steps. It's really that easy. First, we're going to calculate your daily wattage. That's just how much energy you use in a day. Second, we'll figure out your runway, which is just a fancy way of saying how many days of backup power you want. And third, we'll take that info to perfectly size your solar panel array. Let's put some real numbers to this. Say you figure out that you use about 5,000 watt-hours a day. That's 5 kilowatt-hours. And let's say you want a 3-day runway for cloudy days or maybe a power outage. You just multiply 5 by 3, which means you need a 15 kilowatt-hour battery bank. Simple as that. So how do we charge up that big 15 kilowatt-hour battery? Well, you need to know your peaks on hours, which for most of the US is usually about 4 hours on an average day. So you just divide your 15,000 watt-hour battery bank by those 4 hours, and you get 3,750. We'll just round that up to be safe, which means you need a 4,000 watt solar array. See? Not so scary. Okay, now we're getting to the really fun part, picking out the gear. Since we did all that math up front, we can now confidently shop for the core parts of our system. And we're going to start with the most important part, the brain. The inverter is the brain of your whole operation. It takes the power from your batteries and turns it into the kind of power your appliances can actually use. Now, it absolutely must be big enough to handle your continuous load. Think about it. That's the total wattage if you ran everything at the same time. And here's a huge pro tip. Try to get an all-in-one system. It makes the installation so much easier. Next up, you've got a big choice to make about your system type. An off-grid system is exactly what it sounds like. You are completely disconnected from the utility company. A hybrid system, on the other hand, is still connected to the grid, and this gives you a ton of flexibility to use your solar power, your battery power, or grid power, depending on whatever is cheapest or available at the time. Now this is where hybrid systems get really clever. It's a strategy called peak shaving. You can actually program your system to charge up its batteries from the grid at night when electricity is super cheap, and then use that stored battery power during the day when the grid electricity is way more expensive. It is a fantastic way to save money. Okay, you've done the math. You know the type of gear you want. So, how do you shop smart and not get ripped off? This section is all about making the best financial moves and, just as importantly, finding information that you can actually trust. Budgeting is everything, and you can absolutely start small. Maybe you buy half the batteries you need right now and add more later on. That's totally fine. But, and this is a big one, do not cheap out on your inverter. If you buy one that's too small for your future needs, you can't just add to it. You have to rip it out and replace the entire thing. It's a massive waste of money.
This is some of the most critical advice, and it's worth repeating. You are going to see a ton of ads and offers to lease a solar system. Don't do it. When you run the numbers, it's almost always a bad financial decision for you in the long run. Financing or buying the system outright is pretty much always the smarter way to go.
And finally, please be careful where you get your advice. You need to look for the real technical reviewers. The people who actually test lots of different products and show you the real-world data. Be really wary of the lifestyle influencers who probably got their equipment for free and might not be telling you the whole story about a product's problems or its weaknesses.
So there you have it, a clear step-by-step guide to getting started with solar. We went from the basics of how electricity works all the way to sizing your system and shopping smart. The only question left is the most exciting one of all. What would you power with the sun?